Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Outdoor Recreation Knowledge Exchange. My name is Haley Sorg, and I serve as the Extension Educator for the J. Kemmer Worth Institute at the University of Wyoming. I am joined today by a great panel. We're very excited to be able to host this webinar, A Look Inside State Recreation Offices. I am joined today by Guinevere Nelson with CSU Extension, as well as Jake Powell from Utah State University, being able to help host this webinar session today. This is part of our Knowledge Exchange series designed to connect, inform, and support educators, business leaders, policymakers, nonprofits, land managers, recreation professionals, and outdoor enthusiasts. There's a large group of us joining in on these webinars, and together we explore key issues shaping outdoor recreation, tourism, stewardship, workforce, and innovation across our states. This series was developed through a collaborative effort between partners in Wyoming, Colorado, Montana, and Utah, reflecting the shared commitment across Mountain West and strengthening outdoor recreation through knowledge exchange and partnerships. Before we get started for today's webinar, we want to announce that we do have one more webinar coming up in December. That is on December 4th from noon to 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. If you are not already registered for this webinar, we encourage you to do so. You can scan this QR code on your screen, or we'll be dropping that into the chat here in just a little bit. But we've had a great session over these past few times talking about all of these different assets and in different parts of our outdoor recreation industry. And we would love to have you join us for our last session on outdoor guiding, focused more on hunting and fishing, but outdoor guiding in general. So with that, I am going to stop sharing and hand it on over to our facilitator today, Jake.
Thank you, Haley. And a huge thank you to Haley and Guinevere for the work they do to put this together. Outdoor recreation is such an important aspect of being part of the West and the Intermountain West. And one of the really key moments or key pushers in that is some of our state offices of outdoor recreation, and they're termed different things. But we wanted to bring that to the front today and have a conversation about that. So I'm going to turn the time over to our panelists to introduce themselves. And we'll start with Mark in Wyoming, and then we'll have Jason in Utah, Matt in Colorado, and then Rachel in Montana. So with that, I'll turn the time over to Mark to get us introduce himself and let us know a little bit about what's happening in Wyoming.
Thank you, Jake. Just real quick thank you out to the team that put this together, Haley, Guinevere, and Jake. Just awesome opportunity to be in front of everyone and talk about outdoor recreation. So Office of Outdoor Recreation in Wyoming was founded in about 2018 after the governor's task force had set up a request to try and look at outdoor recreation. Our office is underneath State Parks and Cultural Resources, and our team is a team of 6, and we're based throughout the state. We're not all in Cheyenne, which is exciting because we kind of are spaced across the state and have a chance to have our finger on the pulse of the communities throughout the state. Some of the big things that we're working on in our office are the Outdoor Recreation and Tourism Trust Fund, which is a partnership with the Office of Tourism, State Parks, and the Outdoor Rec Office that was created by the legislature in a couple of bills over the past few years. So that's kind of an exciting avenue that we're working on right now. We have a collaborative collaborative program that we work with throughout the state. This is ran by one of our team members, Amy Crawford, and that collaborative process engages local stakeholders from different regions and counties throughout the state. We hope to have 12 of those set up, which would encompass all of the state. We've got 10 of them set up right now. It's been in the works for probably about 4 years, but engaging stakeholders everywhere from local officials, nonprofit groups, trail advocates, elected officials, city and county officials, federal land partners. So kind of a broad spectrum of people in these collaborative groups. And then we also have a full-time outreach coordinator, which is a PR and events coordinator as well. So what am I missing there? I think that's kind of the rundown for Outdoor Rec in Wyoming.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. With that, I'll turn it over to Jason in Utah.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I love talking about this organization and love the growth and interest of outdoor recreation organizations within state governments, especially here in the West, where we've got a lot of unique challenges and but also a lot of things in common. And for Utah, we started at least the initial stage is in 2012, when at that time Governor Gary Herbert had a very difficult conversation with different players, nationally, internationally, when it comes to some of the very complex public lands issues here in Utah. And the Outdoor Retailer Show came into play, and so in 2013, it was decided through an executive order and through a kind of a research process that we would have a state agency, a state office of outdoor recreation within the governor's office inside of economic development. And started with this organization would need to have a strategy and hold an outdoor recreation summit, as well as provide industry support for outdoor recreation businesses and organizations. And we'd also incorporate outdoor recreation into regional planning efforts around the state. And so that's where it started. One person with a support staff, so 2 folks, a vehicle, and a couple of laptops. And that was in 2013, when at that time, Governor Herbert's motivation was this $4 billion going into Utah's economy and GDP from outdoor recreation. So $4 billion at that time sounded like a lot. It sounds like a lot now today, and $300 million in tax revenue. So as time has gone on over the last 13 years, we're in our 13th year now. We've done quite a bit of growth. We've taken on a lot of different programs from other agencies, and in fact, we've become our own codified state agency, no longer just an office or program of the governor. We grew up a few years ago and became a division within the Department of Natural Resources. So we've got ourselves and 10 other sister agencies. And so now we've grown to have a huge grant program where we have about $50 million in state and federal grant money that we distribute around the state. We have statewide trail crews. We're in charge of the state's several of the items within the Division of Parks and Recreation were sort of carved out. And so we oversee the state's boating program, the state's OHV program, as well as the overall business development side of things, as we have done in the Office of Outdoor Recreation. So at this point, now we're at $9.5 billion in GDP and more than $700 million in tax revenue. So more than double in both of those sort of economic indicator categories. Some of that is definitely due to the fact that we've had this office for the last 13 years. We've gone from those 2 people to a pretty sizable organization of about 42 full-time employees and about 28 seasonal. So we got about 70 total staff here, and take a pretty significant part of the Department of Natural Resources. What we're really known for is grants. We have a few state-funded grants that are treasured here within the state, and that's probably the one thing that we do get a lot of recognition for, and I feel like it's one of the most valuable things we do, as well as our Every Kid Outdoors program.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, exciting stuff happening in Utah. With that, I'll turn the time over to Matt to give us a little bit of update of what's happening in Colorado.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Nunez. I'm a senior program manager for the Colorado Outdoor Recreation Industry Office. We are situated under the governor's office in the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. So a little bit unique in that aspect. We are very focused on the economic development component of the industry, business support. That being said, of course, we do work very collaboratively with the Department of Natural Resources and Colorado Parks and Wildlife, who have their own divisions to help with access and resources in the outdoors. We were the second office established nationwide for OREC by then Governor Hickenlooper, currently a U.S. Senator. And we are still a very small team. There's only 4 of us full-time supporting the office. That being said, our agency, the Office of Economic Development, houses about 150 folks, and that includes our Colorado Tourism Office, who, like many of you all, works very closely with the outdoor rec industry here in Colorado. So here in Colorado, we're looking at about $66 billion for the industry, as well as $22 billion in wages and salaries and about 400,000 jobs. and then some 36.5 billion in annual consumer spending. As you know, many folks come to Colorado to enjoy our outdoors. So we want to make sure that the industry behind it is being supported as well as we can. Some of our signature programs, several years ago, we received an American Rescue Plan Act grant to support job creation and retention here in Colorado. That was our inaugural grant program as an OREC office, and that is expiring over the next several months. But through that, we supported 50 nonprofit and government entities around the state, about $3.7 million in grant funds, and then that directly impacted over 500 jobs around the state, either through job creation or retention. So we, with funding challenges and unique funding structures within Colorado state governments, we now have that data to make our argument for why we should have more grant programs and be able to support the industry more here in Colorado. We also have worked on a few signature events. We launched the Outside Festival and Summit in 2024, and that is coming back for its third year in May of 2026. This is a celebration of the outdoor industry created in partnership with Outside Interactive, which is based here in Boulder. And this year in May and June, we saw over 18,000 attendees come through over 4 days to downtown Denver. I know many of the other panelists were able to come into town as well and enjoy the festival, and got to see a lot of great industry partners and leaders, both on the industry side, but also some recognizable names from the outdoors, outdoor athletes and such come through and speak as well. We have our Colorado Outdoor Industry Leadership Summit each fall. We launched our Rural Technical Assistance Program almost 4 years ago now. I work closely with Guinevere on this call with that program, helping to support rural economies around the state, and have worked with a few OREC offices to launch similar models in their state. For being such a small team, we're pretty proud of the work we're able to accomplish. That being said, we're always learning a lot from our state partners around the country. So I'm grateful to be here with some of them today, and thank you all for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, there's a lot of offices that are small but mighty, doing amazing work and different work. And last but not least, I want to introduce Rachel. For those of you who are watching outdoor recreation offices across the West, you may know that Montana doesn't have an office right now, and we asked Rachel to come in to provide, I guess, a little bit of a counterpoint and a story as to how these offices that come about can also sometimes disappear. So Rachel, we wanted you to come on and talk a little bit about your situation there in Montana, even though it's a little bit different than these other offices.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. Again, Rachel Schmidt. I'm up in Whitefish, Montana. When I was in office and we would do panel discussions like this is when I would poke at Wyoming and remind everybody that Yellowstone's actually in Montana, and I don't know why people think it's in Wyoming. So Mark is free from my harassment, which he's probably thankful for. So I created and was the director of the Montana Governor's Office of Outdoor Recreation. Montana was the 4th state to develop an Office of Outdoor Recreation. Governor Steve Bullock was running on his 2nd term. We are term limited here to two terms for governor. His 2nd term, he ran on a very public land related platform due to the nature of Montana and how we roll. And one of his items he promised to do was create an Office of Outdoor Recreation. Enter me. So we developed an Office of Outdoor Recreation. The core purpose of that office is to grow and enhance the outdoor recreation economy in the state. And the way that office was housed is actually very similar to Colorado. So it is an actual office appointed by the governor in the Office of Economic Development. And so I reported to the governor as any other director of an agency would report. So worked great, had some great things going on. But yeah, like the core focuses of the office was, business, basically like business and economic infrastructure, actual infrastructure of recreation, conservation and stewardship, which I refer to as the maintenance of the infrastructure that supports the outdoor recreation economy, education and technical assistance training programs for the industry that are specific to it, and then health and well-being. So those are the branches of work that we engaged in during that time. What the office was very known for, you know, at the time that I started, there were 4 offices. In very short order, there became 6 offices. And so we were very much growing as a group. And, you know, at the time, what we did is I established the Montana Outdoor Recreation Summit. So it was really the first of its kind to bring people from all facets of outdoor recreation, whether it's experiential or manufacturing, together. So we were hosting summits, and so really known for bringing people together, tackling tough issues together, and working to be innovative on those things. The other aspect of things is because there's pros and cons, and that we're going to head into cons in a minute. The pro of the location of my office was absolutely, you know, appointed by the governor. I got to work with anyone, anytime on anything I wanted. And so as a result, I was able to convene different agencies to come together and talk about things that those silos may not have been having conversations about. And so like a very great example of an initiative that was started and then promptly stopped was the integration of Fish, Wildlife and Parks, our agency, with Montana Department of Transportation, identifying unused parcels of DOT lands that would provide additional Montana River access. We do have some of the best river access laws in the country. So it was how do we bring those two together and really expand those opportunities, which is what is supporting the way of life in Montana and what we do. So those were some things that, you know, we're known for. However, Governor Bullock was termed out, and the Outdoor Recreation Office is very nonpartisan. Outdoor recreation is an industry. It's like agriculture. It's nonpartisan. However, that's not necessarily the way things work in politics. The 2 Republicans running for in the primaries to become the Republican candidate. One, his name was Tim Fox. He was the Attorney General in Montana. He was very, very pro Office of Outdoor Recreation, and actually in his platform had extensive plans already for expanding the office. And so really, really had this eye for, you know, remarkable, you know, growth and use of this office. The current governor, Greg Gianforte, had no interest in continuing on any of this work for a myriad of reasons. And so as a result, when he won election, he opted to not staff that office. So it doesn't mean that it has gone away. It doesn't mean that the funding mechanisms for it have gone away, but it does mean that he has chosen as a governor to not staff that office. And it's interesting, you know, like around the 4 years that I was in office, a lot of organizations were really doing a lot of studies on these offices of outdoor recreation and what are we doing and how are they funding themselves? And there's all these resources out there for anybody who's interested in pursuing it for their state or figuring out how to work things in their state. And there was a poll that was done statewide that was delivered to us by, you know, a nonpartisan organization. And the party line support for these offices are through the roof. So 98% support by Democrats, 82% support by independents, and 83% support by Republicans. So this was a very a universally approved and loved program, and everybody saw the need for it. So it is unfortunate that this administration has continued to take that walk.
Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate the way you explain that, kind of helping everybody realize that these offices they come and they can also go in certain situations when they're maybe not maybe when they're in their infancy or structured differently. There is that opportunity. So we appreciate you bringing that to light, and Rachel will be sort of looking back a lot in some of our Q&A questions, and maybe looking forward a little bit about opportunities in Montana if there is an office someday in the future. So thank you for being sort of that different lens that we'll get to see some things through. So in your registration, you posed questions that you wanted to be explored. And so as a team, we went through those questions and sort of aggregated some and tried to find some common themes and topics that we thought would be interesting for this panel to discuss. So for the next little while, we're going to have a conversation among panelists. And the beauty is these folks know each other fairly well, I suppose, interact quite often and have shared interests and challenges across these different states. So I'm hoping that as we explore some of these questions as a panel, that there'll be some commonalities and maybe some nuance that will come out across these state boundaries. So the first question I wanted you to think about, is there something that you've learned, and some of you have been at this for a while, that, maybe longer term divisions or organizational structures, and some are fairly new and small, but is there something you've learned from another state's outdoor recreation office that has impacted your work, and how has it impacted your work? Anybody want to take that on?
Well, since our office has had the most opportunity to see new states form offices, I'll offer something that has been very valuable that we learned from both the states of Wyoming and Colorado, who kind of do something that we took on and have scaled now. When that is our outdoor recreation regional councils. So we've got some funding was identified a few years ago from our state legislature, a sales tax carve out that is to be used for outdoor recreation infrastructure and planning and other things, land acquisition, things that aren't necessarily eligible for our grants. So the first year we tackled that as a head office, and our outdoor adventure commission, which is a state commission of 15 people that are responsible for spending about $22 million per year on those projects. And the first year, I think it worked okay, but we really felt like we were running blind. And so we looked to the example of Colorado and Wyoming and standing up these regional recreation councils all over the state. Our entire state is now covered by a council. And that's how those projects come forward, is they're first reviewed on a regional basis and prioritized on a regional basis from local elected officials, recreation stakeholders, land managers. And then each of those 5 regional councils send their prioritized list up to a state outdoor adventure commission. And we're able to really feel like we have almost grassroots support and review of how those funds are going to be able to get on the ground. So we're in our second year. We just finished up and have felt really good about it. So yeah, grateful for a little bit of the exploratory done by the 2 states that have started some regional level of recreation council.
Thanks, Jason. Anybody else learn something from some other state?
To Jason's point, the director of the office in Washington was always infamous for saying, "Let no good idea go unstolen." And so that's the really amazing part about, all of these offices working so well together in so many different ways. Another piece of information that I gleaned is that discussion of the outdoor rec industry, while it's like secondhand to everybody that's here, it's talking about it in the numbers that we're talking about it, jobs, taxation, all those things. It's kind of a fairly new phenomenon, right? We've had BEA numbers for not that long. And so having those conversations it's kind of still new in some ways, in some places. And so understanding that people are not conditioned to hearing the needs of the outdoor recreation economy and taking them, as seriously as they would talk about agriculture in the same way they've been talking about for 200 years, right? And so a lot of times different things will get elevated above that because the conversation is new and it's different. And so it's finding ways to have that conversation and elevating those needs and helping people understand the ripple effect and how that shakes out through the economy.
Thank you. Matt, you had something?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the call out from Jason. And funny enough, our regional partnerships have since moved under Colorado Parks and Wildlife, which has been a great thing for capacity reasons. But I do also want to call out the Confluence of States, which is our nationwide sort of convening organization that really guides all 25 OREC offices around the country around 4 central pillars. So they've been great to really lean on for kind of that shared knowledge and guidance. In fact, in a couple of hours, I have a call with a bunch of other staffers from those OREC offices gathered through the Confluence. So those meetings are regular and very helpful for our offices. We've also, kind of down to the point of what we have learned from other offices. We have learned a lot about the importance of data-driven decision-making and formalized strategic planning from offices such as Utah and North Carolina as well. We did a strategic planning process as an office about 2 years ago, and it really allowed us to better articulate the industry's value to the state legislature and help to secure long-term funding for our office. So that data-driven approach was really helpful to learn from a couple other states.
Mark, anything Wyoming's learned?
Yeah, thanks, Jake. I'd piggyback on kind of what Jason said. The value, I think, part of it is that we need to do a better job of singing our own praises in the state for outdoor recreation. It is something that's rather new, and I think that messaging is just so crucial and important. So to hear like the work that's been done well before me in the past, I would say 10 years in Wyoming, getting that messaging out there that, outdoor rec industry in Wyoming is a $2.2 billion industry with 16,000 jobs, the second leading industry in the state. And when you start hearing legislators talk about that and the governor saying those same talking points, it's just so important and so crucial to help spread the message. And so we're looking at our neighboring states. I mean, they've done a fantastic job of messaging, and we're trying to capture that, in our messaging as well. And like Matt said, for the confluence of states, the other states across the country, they do amazing job as well. It is interesting to see all of the outdoor rec offices are not under the same kind of model, like some of them are under super agencies or DNR, and we're under state parks and cultural resources. So there's maybe not a one size fits all. But again, I think the messaging is just so important across the spectrum.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I know one thing that's special, I think would be important for our participants to recognize, is that many of these offices were some of the very first. And so there's a lot that they are trying and experimenting with that is being shared across the nation. And there are states all over the nation that are looking to these Western states for lessons learned. And then, as you mentioned, Mark, adapting to their own personal states and then sharing that information back to make these offices better. And I don't know if there's any more nimble, responsive offices in state government than these outdoor recreation offices. My experience, I mean, it's been amazing to see how you guys have adapted to the needs. And some agencies are a little more difficult to adapt than you guys have been. So congratulations, or my applause. Kind of a question that's part and parcel to that learning is how are you guys, how are your state offices working together to support outdoor recreation across the West? Are there ways you're collaborating or sharing information or sharing resources, or how are you guys working together? Can you get us kind of a behind the curtain view on how directors or offices work together?
Well, Matt brought up the confluence, and that's it's worth repeating. That group has been growing in number, and so growing in influence too. We're gaining more and more credibility, and as we're members of the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable as well. And as that organization continues to grow, the confluence, and at the end of this year, there will be hopefully 26 states that have some level of office. And I feel like especially in the West, there will eventually become in our annual. Well, actually, we meet twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall, and we tend to piggyback onto other events like the Outdoor Media Summit that was in Missoula, where we met Rachel, and in North Carolina, we attended the Outdoor Economy Conference. But I think as we push forward in that group and become more and more influential, there will be a Western States coalition that also forms as a kind of a subgroup there within the confluence and this organization. One of my objectives is to help states like Montana right now, also the state of Washington that Rachel brought up. There's no director in Washington either anymore after John left. And so we want to be able to provide the support and the right type of messaging and advice so that we as a confluence can help prevent political wind from influencing negatively the good work that's being done in places like Montana and Washington and other states. Oregon's another one. So yeah, it's something I feel like we're making a lot of progress on it. I'm proud of the confluence.
So one of you should talk about the National Governors Association Outdoor Learning Network.
Do you want to talk about that, Rachel?
Well, I'll hit on it because it is something that you asked early when we were kind of prepping, Rachel. And yeah, the National Governors Association, which Utah's governor has been in leadership roles, and same with Colorado and some of our other Western states, and outdoor recreation has been a prominent theme. And so they formed back, I think it was in about 2018 or so, this outdoor learning network in the National Governors Association to be able to prioritize and inform governors around the country on matters related to outdoor recreation. And as Mark mentioned earlier too, we had a roundtable event where a few of us directors were able to attend the national governors convening on outdoor recreation and health, focusing on informing those governors and making sure they have the right messaging from the people that are here on the ground doing the work. What we really need from them and how we can collaborate and learn more and more. The Outdoor Learning Network is one where we're able to, I guess, form consensus and help governors also form consensus. So as they're meeting together and as they're messaging on their priorities, that outdoor recreation stays relevant and top of the list as much as we can. It's something that everybody thinks of outdoor recreation as leisure. And then the next step is, oh, well, it's also a big economic impact. And of course, those are true, but really the bigger impact are the health and well-being and quality of life impacts. And those are the things we want our governors to be highly aware of. And that's what the ORLN has really leaned into hard.
Jason also mentioned the outdoor recreation roundtable. And so for anyone who's not familiar with that, it's like the association of associations that have to do with recreation. One of the things that I did while I was in office, again, it's about this, what are the mutual needs? What are the mutual interests? So I was able to work with ORR and actually fund a rural recreation funding toolkit at the time when I was in office. And that was something that was really in need that, across our states, everyone was really interested in getting that kind of information and data. So that was a way that, I could step forward in Montana and provide resources for all of the offices to use.
Another way that we're working, with our partners in the West is, we have a Mountain West Trails Conference that was started by Utah last year. I think that kind of piggybacked off of their annual Outdoor Rec Summit. But the meeting last year was in Vernal, Utah, just inviting all of the neighboring states in the West to come out and talk with trails professionals, land managers, agencies, nonprofits, just everything that could happen in the trail space. And so Wyoming is going to be hosting that this year, third week in May, and it'll be in Rock Springs, Wyoming. So just inviting all of the stakeholders to the table at these regional meetings is very important. It just kind of helps promote what we're doing in the outdoor rec space across the West.
And then I really don't have too much more to add that hasn't already been said. Again, I think that confluence of states really is the most critical mechanism for collaboration among OREC offices nationwide, and of course here in the West as well. But we do really support each other through shared advocacy and also just that best practice exchange. And then also thinking about regional economic development and looking at how supply chains and tourism corridors do cross state borders, even here in the West. So that helps us to ensure that economic benefits are shared and that neighboring states are not working at cross purposes. And then even when there are sort of competing economic interests among our states, we still work very collaboratively and we do try and lift each other up. I think are all in support of seeing as many outdoor rec offices as possible. So, we want to bring Montana back online. Yeah, we want to get Washington going again and then help to spread that impact across the rest of the country. So we're all very collaborative in that regard as well.
Awesome, thanks. Just a timeout real quick. If there are questions that the audience has, I'm kind of using ones that came in through our registration portal, but if there's questions that are burning inside of your brain right now, use the Q&A feature. There's a button at the bottom of your screen to pose those questions, and we'll see them as panelists and propose them to or we'll see them as facilitators and pose them to our panelists. So I'm curious for you, our panelists, like as you think a little bit more about the future, what do you see as the biggest challenges and opportunities coming down the pipe for your office or your state in the next 1 to 5 years? Are there things you're kind of projecting and maybe beginning to develop strategies for, or things maybe that are beyond your strategies that you're really worried about that this audience might need to have on their radar? And Jason, you go first every time, so I'm going to throw it to Mark.
Sure. So one of the big challenges I think that we're going to be facing in Wyoming is, when we talk about funding, this outdoor recreation and tourism trust fund that's coming online next year is to really show viable projects, show that stakeholder work throughout the different regions, communities, counties, areas, to show all of the work that's going into those projects and to turn around and use that messaging, to show that, our office is viable, that what we're doing with this trust fund money is important to those communities. There's an economic component, of course, a well-being component for local residents, and then also that tourism money that comes into it. I mean, our trust fund is based on a lodging, capturing just a fraction of the lodging tax that comes into the state. That's a statewide tax, and there's just a fraction carve out for this trust fund. So we have basically about $12 million that was seeded into that fund. And then we hope to grow that fund into the future, into the range what something like Colorado has, and Matt can probably go into theirs a little bit more as well. But if we had a couple $100 million in a trust fund that we could be giving out money to communities and projects throughout the state into the future, I mean, that's what is going to be really important for us to do, and it's going to be a challenge. I mean, we're not exactly sure what that looks like. We're working on the rules and guidelines, and getting those to the Attorney General and to the governor for review. And then next year we'll be able to start granting out that money. Anything under $200,000 can be approved by a 9-member board that we have. Anything above that has to go back to the legislature. But you want to have good projects. You want to show what that money is being used for, and have it viable uses, practical uses. Throughout the state. So that's one of the challenges I think that we'll be up against in the next handful of years.
Here in Colorado, a few of the challenges we face really have to do with affordability and also loving places to death. Colorado is a very popular tourist destination, as I stated earlier. So workforce development and housing, particularly in our ski communities, our mountain communities, and even those outlying gateway communities across the western half of Colorado, is really impacting employers across the state. Just anecdotally, I've heard of stories of workers who work in Aspen and then live in Grand Junction, which is about a 2-hour drive away through 2 different canyons. So it really is pretty unbelievable, the challenges that they face in some of these communities. On top of that is the stewardship and capacity. During COVID, really everywhere around the country, more folks were getting outdoors, which is wonderful. But we do run into that love it to death challenge. So there is a gap between the need for trail maintenance, search and rescue, and resource protection versus what is available in both human funding and capital. And then finally, our internal challenge is that sustainable government funding. Colorado does have a pretty unique structure of government revenue and tax revenue for the state. So we have faced an uphill battle in identifying long-term funding for our office in particular. Some 30 plus years ago, the Colorado Lottery dedicated all of its funding towards resource protection and outdoor recreation here in Colorado, which was pretty innovative at the time. And we have been able to tap into that for long-term funding, but that has been an uphill challenge as everybody is fighting for more dollars on the state level. In terms of opportunities, along with that stewardship and capacity, we feel that we do have an opportunity to become a leader in sustainability, including supporting the transition of outdoor product manufacturers towards low carbon materials and manufacturing processes, and promoting sustainable transportation to recreation sites. One example is Hanging Lake, which is outside of Glenwood Springs, Colorado. Is one of the most popular hiking trails in the state, one of the most recognizable kind of lakes that you'll find in photographs. And it was one of the first public hiking areas to implement a timed entry system, which has now spread throughout the state and has become very effective in managing those natural resources. Additionally, economic diversification in rural Colorado is a big opportunity for us. Outdoor rec is a powerful tool for economic resilience in rural and underserved areas. So by strategically investing in and marketing outdoor assets in these areas, we can create new jobs, stabilize local economies, and distribute the economic benefits of the outdoor industry more equitably across the state. And then the last piece I'll add just around opportunities is working to be a leader in that equitable access to the outdoors as well. Thinking about, in particular, how we can get more youth into the outdoors as everybody's facing the challenges of, more screen time in their lives. A couple of our partners implemented some of the first gear libraries nationwide, Get Outdoors Leadville and then the city of Glenwood Springs. We have seen those grow in immense popularity. And so it's part of a much larger effort to just provide better access to the outdoors.
Jason or Rachel, do you have anything to add?
Well, sure. I'll echo everything, because Utah's facing a lot of those same challenges, and I would still, much of our challenges conversation goes to growth. Utah continues to be a very fast growing state, and we're trying to adapt to that. The whole idea of loving it to death, Matt, you referenced that, something we hear as well. And so there's kind of two forks to that growth conversation. Number one, our demographics are changing. So that means two things. Well, first of all, people who are moving here to Utah and people who are bringing their businesses here to Utah, we know through some research that the number one reason they cite for doing any of those things that causes our growth is because of access to outdoor recreation. And so adapting to that growth is going to be challenging. The other piece to that is our immigrant community continues to grow in Utah. We've got, even like right here in the neighborhood where my office is, we've got lots and lots of people from places like Africa, the Middle East, Asia, South and Central America. So communities that typically aren't immersed in outdoor recreation the way that a lot of Utah is, we really need to provide opportunities for those people to engage in outdoor recreation, because it's not something that is it's not demographically driven as far as what's innate in us. We all have that innate desire to reconnect with nature and be part of the outdoors. And so giving these communities that are growing opportunities to be exposed to that and become hooked, I think is a no-brainer for us. We have to do more in that regard. And so I guess I would say there's those two forks, and they come together in one element that we're trying to tackle, and that is in the arena of planning. When people in the transportation world talk about planning, they're talking about planning very, very in-depth and very projected demand on things like highways and freeways and surface streets and infrastructure. And we are attempting to take that same approach that is used in the transportation world for long-term planning, so that we have a really solid, reliable list of priorities and list of locations and projected demand for outdoor recreation, especially when it comes to infrastructure, but the types of activities that are going to be in demand, the ones that are in demand now. And so we've already sort of launched a pilot project in central Utah, and we hope to be able to extend that long-range planning effort across the state.
And I guess I'll add, obviously in 3 years, we have a forced change of administration in Montana. And so this is an opportunity for, as you listen to these three gentlemen here talk about what they're working on, it would baffle me that any state leaders and leadership would not be interested in what everyone is working on here. We're all facing these same challenges. And it's a very compelling case, to house these offices in each of our states to work on these topics. But I want to point out, like, a big picture part of this conversation is that when you heard these three gentlemen talk, they were talking consistently about serving the residents of their states. This is about the way of life of the people that live in their states and the serving of their people and their economies, right? And so, like, for example, when in Montana as well, over 50%, and this is a 2020 graphic, over 20% of consumer spending on recreation, over 50% is in-state residents spending money on what they want to do for their way of life in their states. And so this is about resident support. And yes, tourists receive a benefit from that when they come and experience our way of life. But that is something that a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their head around when they hear Office of Outdoor Recreation, that tourism, it's great. And it's like, well, no, that is not what this is all about. That is a piece of what that is. And so I just wanted to point that out, that, everything you heard about, heard here was serving your residents and making the way of life a better way of life.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that, Rachel. I appreciate that. That was sort of a thought I had as you've all talked about these challenges. They're big, right? They're really complicated, wicked challenges that are happening in these states. That I know for myself here in Utah, like, I'm glad someone's working on it, right? I'm glad there's a team of people at our state level that's really, their brains are on this, and they're trying to understand these challenges, take them apart, and then create solutions, which I think is amazing. And I think these offices they're in that niche where they're thinking about these interrelated, interconnected challenges that are really tough and trying to come up with solutions. So thank you for all your work on that. And I will send out another plea to the audience. If you have questions, go ahead and put them out in the Q&A. We'll pose them to our panelists. But with that, I'll just keep peppering you guys, because I think there's some really interesting information coming out. How do you, in your own individual states, collaborate with other entities, nonprofits, non-governmental agencies, or organizations? In what role do you play when it comes to bringing them together, even if it's confrontational or difficult? Do you guys step into that space as state offices, or in Rachel, your case, you mentioned that was sort of a space you guys worked in? How did that work? What was your unique role, and what were some of the things that came out of that? Anybody willing to take that one on?
Yeah, in Wyoming, in part of our agency, we have a planning department that engages with Forest Service and BLM. Any type of action that's coming down the pike, we're always engaged with that, and OREC is, of course, always at the table with that. But our collaborative process, that program that we have, it's engaging stakeholders throughout the state and in all of those communities, and inviting elected officials, land managers, NGOs, advocates, other state agencies, state land, game and fish, all to the table at one time, so that if you have a project that's moving forward, you don't hit some road bump later that says, hey, did you check with wildlife on this? They're already at the table or have been at the table. Access issues, there's a huge gamut of stuff that we're working on in those collaboratives throughout the state. So that's one great way that we do it.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I do think Rachel kind of mentioned this. Outdoor recreation does seem to be a glue that sticks a lot of stuff together, and that these state offices sort of step into that space as a facilitator or convener on these tough issues that maybe outdoor recreation is the thread that ties them together. I think is pretty amazing. Any other states work in that sort of space of bringing together diverse groups to try to maybe negotiate some of these tough problems?
Yeah, we do a lot of convening, and we also do some mediating. So it's kind of two sides of that coin. But our Outdoor Recreation Summit is still ongoing. We've just finished our 13th one, our 11th one. And then Mark mentioned our Trails Conference, and that has been successful for a really long time. Jake, you remember the original Trails Forum, which was a great convening space for trails organizations to come together and talk about, best practices, get on common ground, and resolve any conflicts. I think having that conference provides that opportunity. And a lot of times we won't know that there was a resolution arrived at. Maybe it was in a side conversation, but it's an opportunity for the convening people to come together. And then, in the mediating space, we do have this I feel an obligation to really fight for our outdoor industry and outdoor business folks. We've had difficult conversations about tariffs and other things, as well as our guides and outfitters, who are a huge part of that, and the struggles that they have with federal land managers and how we might be able to act as intermediaries and helpers in that space. Where we have really, really good positive partnerships with the Forest Service, the BLM, and the National Park Service. So if people are having difficulty with any of those federal agencies, we can typically get a meeting and talk about solutions and arrive at resolutions pretty easily.
It's very similar in Colorado. Our statewide conference as well. We had our 8th one last month, and we bring together over 200 individuals from across the industry. We have our office advisory group as well, which is 20 plus individuals. We try to keep it as representative as of the entire industry as possible, from manufacturers to retailers to guides and outfitters to NGOs to educational partners as well. The mediation we don't do as much of, except when we are asked. Recently there was a small community where REI is hoping to set up shop, and the local businesses were not too happy. So being a neutral party in that process, we stepped in to help facilitate that conversation and make sure that everyone could work together. Jason mentioned the kind of regional collaboratives or regional partnerships that Utah and Colorado have had in different forms. Our office launched our Regional Alliance program in 2019 or so. Following COVID, that really transitioned over to our Colorado Parks and Wildlife, which has a lot more capacity, but is now covering statewide across, regional partnerships across the entire state. And so we have been able to work with them to really advance the industry needs beyond just that scope of recreation and natural resources that is typical under Parks and Wildlife. I forgot where I was going to go from there, but working with those different agencies as well. Oftentimes we are serving as the business advocate or voice when there are conflicts that might arise with Colorado Parks and Wildlife around access, permitting, et cetera, or Department of the Interior, Forest Service, so on.
Awesome. Maybe this last question, and Rachel, I'm going to have you start off with it, but if your state doesn't have an Office of Outdoor Recreation, there's a vacuum there in Montana perhaps, but in other states where you've heard this conversation, you're thinking, oh, there's all this great thing happening. I wish our state had that. What are ways that if you don't have an office, that maybe from a state standpoint or our audience that's listening in, how do they support the industry or fill in some of these places where states have stepped in the past? Do you have any thoughts? And I'll start with you, Rachel, and then finish off with any of the panelists that maybe have thoughts. How to support the industry without when you don't have that entity that's taking some of these leadership roles?
Yeah, in a lot of states, there's, in Montana, there's businesses for outdoor recreation, right? It's an industry group that comes together. So oftentimes there's industry groups that can pull together and pull forward for the industry. And then, the Outdoor Recreation Summit was a vastly popular thing we had going on. And so that actually has been continued. And so you can actually look to higher education because of the expanding offerings, that deal with outdoor recreation management and, economy. A lot of times you can find spaces to engage and support through higher education. Those are the two, two places I would suggest going, to support that.
Other thoughts from the panelists, how you support an industry or the outdoor recreation economy, ecosystem maybe is a better word, of all those interrelated players that you feel like could help maybe in a state that doesn't have an office?
Get in office is what you're supposed to say.
Yeah, I
enough.
mean, maybe that is a solution, is advocate in your own state. And there is, to that point, Rachel, you mentioned there is a lot of information, studies, data about the benefits of these states that I think some states may not know about. So perhaps advocating for that or highlighting that information. Jason, you had something?
Well, I was going to mention yesterday I was on a similar type of webinar with a group in California who is undertaking a similar effort. You know, it's kind of surprising. There's no outdoor recreation office in Montana. That's surprising. California, it's surprising. So their Outdoor Business Alliance (OBA) is taking the lead on that to advocate for find folks within the state legislature who are willing to sponsor, garner support from.
Oh.
We may have lost Jason. Oh, Jason, sorry, we lost you just for a second.
Drill going off. So I got a fire alarm in the building. So I'll have to check out. But
okay, thank you, Jason. That sounds important.
I'm sure it's fine. But anyway, finishing that up. If you can find the ORG, the California group, those webinars have got like 4 or 5 of them. Really helpful in this conversation. So I guess I better evacuate. Good talk.
Thanks, Jason. Well, on that, we'll wrap things up. Thank you. I want to thank our panelists for highlighting some of the amazing work that's happening in our offices of outdoor recreation, and then some of the things that the areas of opportunity as well. And I do think that we are in a unique situation here in the West where we do have so many offices and they work so collaboratively to share information and resources. It inspires me, like I said, as someone who sometimes looks at all those problems that are associated with outdoor recreation, to see offices that are working on that is really amazing. And I think my lifestyle has been greatly impacted in positive ways because of the work that all of them do. So with that, I want to turn the time over to Guinevere to summarize things and close this up.
Hey, thanks, Jake, and thank you to everyone who came on our panelists today. It was super interesting to learn about how we all in the West are struggling with the same things. I especially liked how you guys all get along and can have a good time. I appreciate that as well, always. Haley has just put some closing thoughts into the screen there. And we are looking at planning our 2026 panel. So I'm just going to throw our emails in there to see if you guys want to reach out to us and suggest anything. But we really do appreciate everybody's time today, whether you're a panelist, a host, or joining us in the audience, because we just think sharing this information is really important and will, like somebody said, raise all ships. So thanks for your participation today, and we'd love to have you join us for our next webinar. And Haley put that in the chat as well. So thanks to everyone, and hope to see you out on the trails somewhere.